Hey YouTube, we got to do some regular maintenance here on the Suzuki V-Strom. This is a 2012. They made this bike for many years in the SV1000, TL1000, and DL1000 in this case. So a lot of bikes are going to go exactly like this. What are we doing? Valve clearance adjustment. So we'll take a break from my GS550 Cafe Racer project. Because we have to, you got to take care of maintenance when it's time. This is at a 15,000 mile, don't know what that is in kilometers, sorry, I should figure that out. Maintenance interval on valve clearance adjustments. I've done it once before at 15,000 on this bike, and I've done it on several other bikes. This one's a little different, a lot to take apart here before you even get to the valves. So let's get started. Welcome to Urban Monk TV. So the first step is get the tank and all of the fairing sides off. Lots of videos out there on YouTube already about how to do this. I'm not going to redo that here. Go watch those videos. But in particular, on the right hand side, if you have the Givi crash bars, and there's a lot of these out there, there's a particular method to getting that right side fairing cover off without removing these bars. I've done a video on that. I'll put a link below, so check that piece out along with whatever DL1000 fairing removal video you want to watch. So let's get this off. Once the fairings are off, you got to get the tank off, but first the seat's got to come. Got a 12 millimeter here. Once you take the 12 millimeter bolt out, this hold down bracket serves two purposes. You lift the tank, and there's two holes down here, and you can prop the tank up with that so that you can get at your connections. A couple of simple connections here. Here's the electrical connection for the fuel pump. I use a little screwdriver. These little screwdrivers, this is probably the most used tool other than my socket set in my whole toolbox. Definitely get a small screwdriver. This thing is all over my videos. Okay, so fuel pump disconnected. Fuel line is right under here. You got a pinch to. It's a typical fuel injected system where you pinch two tabs. Have a rag ready, by the way, there could be a little gas here. Comes out pretty dry. So fuel line, fuel pump, and on the other side vent for the tank. Take some finessing to wiggle it off. Okay. And another vent. Two 10 millimeter wrenches. If you have a ratcheting box end that has the hinge on it, so it'll angle, that might be a little quicker, but my ratcheting box end is straight, and then I didn't have enough clearance because of this case I have here. Of course, not all of you will have that on there. Zoom in a little bit.
So the nut comes off of this side, and then just by lifting slightly on the tank I can slide that bolt out. And take that bracket out. It helps to do this with a slightly empty tank, so if you can think ahead and run it down, you'll save yourself a lot of weight. And away it comes. Keep all of your screws and fasteners from the fairing organized. I put them in a magnetic dish and set them on the table and a workbench where I won't knock them in relative order to how they're arranged on the bike. And with the tank off now, and the seat of course, I've got good access to the top of the number 2 cylinder. But now we got to get into number 1, and look who's in the way, Mr. Radiator. Time to drain the coolant. I have one of these drain pans that is dedicated strictly to coolant. I never put oil in this particular one because sometimes you drain coolant that isn't that old out of an engine. In this case, my records, my journal for this motorcycle, indicate that I last changed this coolant just about 7 months ago, and well, that's not that old. The change interval for coolant is 2 years on this bike, so I may reuse this coolant. We'll see what it looks like when I pull it out of the engine. I expect it to look pretty good, pretty clean, pretty green, and with this kind of a drain pan I can capture it and pour it easily and reuse it if I want. Okay, coolant drain is right here, 10 millimeter. Oh, loosen your radiator cap up top. Cold engine, of course. Nice and clean in there, happy to say. And if I recall, this gets over the oil cooler a little bit, but no harm done. And then I'm also going to remove this top bolt on the water pump, just to make sure that that drains properly. Although I may wait till the level gets down to there. There we go. With the coolant out and the drain pan removed, now's a good time to put some cardboard down because we'll have a little bit of residual oil and maybe a few drops or so of coolant that'll still drip here. So if you care for your concrete, throw down some cardboard. Loosen the upper radiator hose is the first step in getting the radiator off. With a channel lock, you can grab this hose and just give it a little twist. There you go. Once it's twisted and snaps loose, then you can pull the hose off. Don't squeeze that too tight and deform the radiator inlet. Same thing on the bottom, except this tube comes out of the bottom of the radiator and then angles down a little bit, and it isn't immediately apparent. So just kind of be careful of the way you pull this down. You know, don't be trying to go straight out and break it. It's downward angled. I want to disconnect this siphon hose. And then we've got a 10 millimeter bolt down here holding on this reservoir. We're going to take that off. Oh, and I've also got this hose at the bottom. Next we got to get behind the radiator, back behind the shroud, and it helps to undo this 10mm bolt here that mounts the bottom of the radiator to the top of the number 1 cylinder. Then we can swing this out. You see, with that out, then we can slide our radiator and we get some residual coolant. But now I can get to the back. Next we have to disconnect the horn leads. I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but up in there is our horn leads. I'm sure that's blurry. This camera's not great for close-ups, but get those disconnected. And then the next thing is all of these connectors that are on the back side of the fan shroud. We just have to pull them out of the shroud. They do not need to be disconnected. And one note, when you're working around the radiator and your hands are up against it, like when I'm pulling the horn leads, the back of my knuckles are touching the radiator fins. Be very careful with those fins. If you bend them in any way, get that little screwdriver out or a pick and put them back to straight. It is through those fins that you're losing all of your engine heat, and if they get folded over and creased in too many places, you lose cooling efficiency, and that's going to be a problem. And for getting these electrical connectors disconnected from the back of the shroud, it helps to hold the connector from the outside and be pushing in on the tab from the inside. Some of them are really tight. I use a small stubby flat blade screwdriver just to give myself something to push sideways against that tab. And the clearances are tight because of the fan is back here. There we go. Just be careful not to be pressing your knuckles up against the radiator. And the last one out of 4 is over on this side. One of the more difficult parts of this whole project, and it seems like a simple thing. There we go. It's out. They're meant to stay in there, but they're also meant to come off. They should come off easier than that. Need to disconnect the cooling fan motor, which is connected here in the front, and so you just got to push a little tab with a tiny screwdriver and then start pulling that out the bottom. There, disconnected. And the last thing is the final mounting bolt. There's only 2 mounting bolts on the radiator. One at the bottom, which we already disconnected to be able to swing it out, and then this one up here, 10mm. And with that bolt removed, I can grab my radiator, carefully wiggle it out without scraping it. So, go put this someplace safe. And now that you have the radiator out, great time to inspect all of these fins. It'll never get easier to make repairs on your radiator than right now. I'm pretty careful with my radiator, but I do see I've got some bugs in here and a couple of areas where I could get my tiny pick and screwdriver out and just straighten out those fins. So I'll put a little time into cleaning this up while it's out, and it'll serve me well for many years to come, as long as I'm diligent about replacing the coolant at good intervals. And now you can see we've got good access to the number 2 and good access to number 1. Next step is to get the spark plugs out and that breather hose disconnected. Breather hose is just a simple little clamp. Get it with a needle nose. Might have to twist it some just to loosen it. And then pull it off. Get your fuel line out of the way. These do get tight in here with this valve cover. I may end up taking this bracket off just for some cleaner access too. That is not called for, but I'm going to do it. Just it kind of overlaps here. Anyways, pull out our spark spark plug lead, and with an extension, pull out my spark plug. Gravity always holding it down in there. Needle nose. Same procedure down here on number 1. One more thing to connect on the head of number 2 is the camshaft position sensor. You can leave the sensor on the head, but just disconnect it from the wiring. So as I had mentioned earlier, I took this bracket and just moved it back, so give myself a little bit more room. Next step, we've got this head completely unplugged, and it's time to take the 4 valve cover bolts off. They are 6mm hex. Yeah, 6mm. As you take these off, there's a rubber O-ring here. Too much stuff in my hands. Take that O-ring and keep it with the bolt. And so with those 4 removed, you can carefully pull away the gasket. The one thing you're going to have is down here there are rubber end caps that have RTV silicone sealant there, and so those you gotta carefully pull away. Don't tear the gasket. In fact, probably best just to I'm gonna get a screwdriver and just pop that out. So I can carefully pry against the end of the camshaft and just get these loosened. There we go. Just want to break the glue. This one down here is a little more difficult because it's behind this frame rail. Okay, so I really took my time with that and was careful. I just took a flat blade screwdriver, got it against here, and just carefully pressed it inward just to break the seal around on both of these. Once they're loose, then I can pull it all the way out. I'm going to go ahead and take the cover off and reach back here and grab my gasket. So keep that gasket, I don't know if you can see this, keep that all in good shape, or you're going to have to go to Suzuki and replace it. And it is reusable. And so with the number 2 valve cover, you can identify it a couple of different ways. One, it says rear on the inside, but also it's the one with the camshaft position sensor on it. The front one, number 1, doesn't have that. There's a little dowel here with an O-ring around it. That O-ring's reusable, but be careful when you pull the cover off that it doesn't get lost or drop down in there. This time when I pulled this off, it raised right up to the top of that dowel and almost fell in, but didn't. So keep an eye out for that one. Same thing on the front, 4 6mm hex. And with those 4 bolts removed, we can again pull our cover off and again have to wiggle and finesse these end caps on the gasket.